This is the video in my ayahuasca series I think everyone is most excited about. I'm going to give you all the tea about what I experienced in the actual ceremonies. In this video, we'll talk about my communication with the other side, E.T.s, spirit guides, my ancestors, my inner child, past lives, and we'll also talk about some of my insights and the healing that took place. If you're new here, hi, I'm Colby, and I make content about crystals, consciousness, and the occasional conspiracy. If this sounds like your vibe, subscribe, like, and share. Okay, so in part 2 of this series, we were just getting into what was going on in the actual ayahuasca ceremonies. Part 1 was all about logistics, preparation, and the special diet. If you're interested in either of those, they'll be linked below. Otherwise, let's get into it. So I'm at Rythmia in Costa Rica, very luxurious as far as ayahuasca ceremonies go. And there are 4 nights of ceremony, 3 nights of ayahuasca, and 1 night of yahe. Yahe is similar to ayahuasca and has a reputation for being very intense, but more on that later. So night 1 of ceremony for me was very blissful. It was a beautiful experience. I couldn't have asked for a better one. It was all sacred geometry and dancing and laying in hammocks, exploring different galaxies, star systems. And throughout the night, there was an overwhelming feeling of love. I've never felt so loved in my life, and I just felt really safe. So at Rythmia, prior to your ceremonies, you attend classes where they give you advice, and they basically tell you for the best result, just surrender, trust, and let go. Now, I'm a Leo sun and a Virgo rising, and I very much like to be in control of things, so that wasn't easy for me to do, but I flew all the way to Costa Rica to have this experience, and I trusted the staff, so I was like, let's do it. I definitely think one of the reasons I had such a profound experience is that I did surrender and I absolutely trusted the medicine and let go. Now, this is where it starts to get weird, but I like weird, and maybe you do too. On night 1 of the ceremony, the most powerful thing that happened to me was the surgery I had. I know, it sounds crazy. And honestly, a lot of the things I say moving forward will sound crazy, just letting you know. At the same time, you're here for my experience, so here it is. In part 1, I talked about synchronicities surrounding an octopus leading up to my trip to Costa Rica. I even went out and bought this octopus necklace after my trip. Basically, I was running into a lot of octopus related things leading up to the ceremony. And on night 1 of the ceremony, the octopus came and visited me. So I've drank the medicine, I'm laying down on the mat, my eye mask is on, my eyes are open, and I see the octopus come and float over me. It was a very loving energy, so loving and so intelligent. I'm going to call it he, but I don't know if it has a gender. So telepathically, the octopus asked if it could help me. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. So he tells me to lay down on my stomach. And he flattens out his arms to show me. And he's like, lay down like this, lay down like me. Now, I really didn't want to roll over because the medicine makes you feel a little nauseous. And I was scared if I laid on my stomach, I was going to throw up. But how do you say no to the octopus? So I rolled over, laid on my stomach, spread my arms out. And he was like, okay, let's get to work. And it's making like a suctiony, like ASMR sound. Now, when I say I felt it touching me, it wasn't as real as someone physically touching you. Imagine an energy field extending slightly beyond your body, and he's tapping on that, and I'm able to feel that. I didn't want to start asking too many questions, and then he'd be like, girl, goodbye. You're doing too much. Again, I just trusted the energy. It felt so loving. So I was like, this must be a good thing. Now, this is the crazy part. The next day in class, I learned that I was not the only person to have this experience with the octopus. And there were a few other people that received these healings from the octopus, which they call surgeries at Rythmia. Mind you, I don't know any of these people. We have very different life experiences. So that was cool to me. Other people also mentioned seeing mantis-like beings. We're also working on the physical body. Some people did get the insight on what exactly was being healed with their bodies. I did not. I think it's because I didn't ask. But also, I've had back problems since I was in high school. I've been going to a chiropractor. So when I started working on my back, I was like, that makes sense. Okay, night 2 was definitely turned up a notch. I feel like each of my nights had themes. The theme of night 1 for me was remembering who I am. So I met with some of my guys, was shown past lives on other planets, explored around the universe, that kind of thing. And I'm not going to lie, this night was definitely more uncomfortable, darker, heavier. But it was interesting because in each moment where I felt afraid or overwhelmed, I was given a choice to walk away or to continue through to the other side where I would receive insight and answers and healing. I thought that was funny because there was actually a quote on the wall in my room that said, the shortest way out is through. So all night I was like, I'm going through. Let's get to the point. I'm trying to heal. Let's just do this. Now, this part is a little difficult for me to share, like, a little uncomfy, but I'm going to do it because I really feel called to. So at one point in the night, I was on a slave ship. And as you can probably imagine, the energy was so heavy. By the way, When you're on ayahuasca, you're very much aware of where you are. So I knew I'm in Costa Rica, I'm at Rythmia, I'm in this room. But at the same time, you can fully have experience of being in another place. It's difficult to explain, but just imagine that you're able to perceive two things at once. So I'm on the slave ship and I'm there. My heart is heavy, like my heart physically hurt. And every cell in my body was just so heavy and sad. Like, I don't have the words for it. I want to say depression, but it was something beneath that. It was just like a hopelessness, like a, I don't know how to describe it. Even now, when I say it, I feel like I'm picking up that energy. I'll probably have to like cleanse myself after this. And as I looked around, I just felt like I can't handle this anymore. I can't take this anymore. And one of my ancestors came in and comforted me. And she was saying, it's okay. It won't always be like this. It won't always be like this. And I'm like, okay, what's the message? Why am I here? And then Mother Ayahuasca showed me that trauma is stored in your DNA. And I'd heard that before, but now I really got it. So I was being shown that I was carrying all this pain and trauma and sadness, like that wasn't even mine. That was from my ancestors. And I guess that kind of is mine in a way, but it wasn't something I was consciously aware of in this life. So the medicine was showing me this so I could release it and heal it. Basically shining the light of awareness on it. So finally, Mother Ayahuasca's like, "Are you ready to let this go?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, this feels terrible. Let's get it out." And she's like, "Good. Go poop." If you watch my last videos, then you know, thankfully, I did not throw up at all during ceremony, but I did poop a lot. So I power walked to the bathroom and I purged. One really cool thing about purging is that you can ask the medicine what you just purged. So if you throw up in your bucket or poop in the toilet, you're encouraged to look at it and ask the medicine, what is that? And sometimes it'll tell you that's fear, jealousy, anger, or in this case for me, it was ancestral trauma. By the way, it doesn't always answer you. Sometimes it says nothing, and sometimes it says that's not yours. Don't worry about it. You can even purge for other people. I did for some of my ancestors and my family. And it's so funny because going into it, I'd heard of people saying that they purged for other people. And I was like, good luck with that. I'm not throwing up for nobody. I barely want to throw up for myself. But luckily, I didn't have to throw up. So I think I was more willing to do it. Also, you say a lot of things when you're not in that room. And once you get in there, you get real humble. It's a whole different story. My heart was so open. I was so full of love. I was like, yes, I want to help my family. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video so far, please give me a like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you feel called. Now let's get into night 3, which was the most difficult night for me. So at Rythmia, night 4, which is the Yahe night, has a reputation for being the most difficult and intense. But that was not the case for me. Night 3 was hell on earth. Okay, I'm being a little bit dramatic, but it was definitely the most difficult. So the Rythmia staff and the shaman set an intention for night 3 that it was like a feminine energy night. If you're like me and you operate in your masculine energy a lot, you might understand where I'm going with this. For me, it can be very uncomfortable and sometimes terrifying to be so vulnerable and receptive. And I think most of us can relate that it can be really difficult to just surrender and flow. Now, the irony is, the staff was saying, this is going to be such a fun night. Bring your dancing clothes. They told us this was the night that people normally enjoyed the most and that they celebrated and had a great time. Bruh. I was going through it, okay? I don't know what they were talking about. I was crying. I was feeling sorry for myself. And the main message for me that night was to be gentle with myself. The medicine showed me different experiences I had in this lifetime where I had been so hard on myself about different choices or perceived mistakes that I made. And then it showed me that the truth was, I did the best I could have done with the tools and the information I had at the time. And then it showed me how and why I became the way that I am or was. Because of my life experiences, I built up so many walls of protection because there were times where I was not protected as a child. So I built up these defenses and became hard and strong and distrusting and angry. And it showed me that that may have been appropriate at the time. It was a coping mechanism, but now it was time to let some of that go. Now, when I say I wasn't protected as a child, I want to be very clear. My parents were absolutely incredible. Amazing. 10 out of 10. But as many of us know, your parents cannot protect you from everything. They don't see everything. They're not always around. And no matter how much someone loves you, you still have to go through your journey in life. So during the other 2 nights in ceremony, whenever I was struggling with something, I generally sought out a female shaman or a shaman's assistant. It was just who I was naturally drawn to. But interestingly enough, on the feminine energy night, it was the male shamans and team members that I went to for help. And they were so wise and gracious and loving and compassionate. So there was a part of them too that was operating in their feminine energy. And at one point during the ceremony, I was so angry. I was so angry that I hadn't been protected in the way that I felt I should have been protected as a child. And I sought out one of the shaman's team members and we just talked. And he helped me realize that everyone was doing the best they could for me. They just didn't have the tools either. So that perspective really helped me have compassion and to forgive and to move on. There was another time where I was processing something that was really difficult for me, and I kind of forgot how to breathe properly. Like, I was breathing very shallowly, and I'm like, I need to learn how to breathe again. So I got up, I'm looking for help, and I see someone from the shaman's team that's wearing all white. And my brother always wears all white. So it reminded me of him. I'm like, this guy can help me. So I like barely make it to him. I'm like crawling to get to him. And once I get there, I just collapse at his seat. There's like a little pillow for you to sit. So I just like collapse onto the pillow. And I'm like, help me, I'm weak. Which is not something I would ever say in real life. Like, couldn't be me. But like I said, the medicine humbles you. I was weak in that moment. I needed help. So he prays over me, does some things with his hands, maybe energy work, and I start to feel better, but I'm still struggling with my breathing. So he's like, okay, go back to your mat and lay down and I'll show you. So he helps me back to my mat. And then I reach out and I'm like putting my hand on his chest so I can feel his breathing. And I'm like, okay. So then I match his breathing pattern and I immediately feel better. And so that for me was a huge lesson because I was learning to ask for help. I was being taught it's okay to not always be strong. There are good people out there who want to help you, but sometimes you have to ask. And I know this may sound small to some people, but I'm a Leo. I'm very prideful. So for me, this was like revolutionary information like, oh, I can just ask for help and no one will judge me and no one will call me weak. Who knew? So, yeah, that was very healing for me. Another huge revelation for me involved E.T.s. If you follow me on TikTok, you probably know that for my whole life, I've been very afraid of the dark. And I think most people have or have had this fear to some degree, but my fear was at a whole different level. And I wasn't afraid of humans, like someone breaking into the house or kidnapping me. And I wasn't afraid of ghosts. I was always afraid of being abducted by aliens. And the fear was so strong, I thought everyone had this fear. It wasn't until I made a TikTok maybe a year ago where I asked what people were afraid of in the dark, and everyone was like, not aliens. What are you talking about? I've also always had a fear of my eggs being harvested or stolen. Like, I have friends who've frozen their eggs, and my mom talks to me about it sometimes because she really wants grandkids. And my first response is no, I feel like the facility is going to steal my eggs and like do some weird science experiment on them. I don't know. And I would say that to people, and they would always look at me like I was crazy. But one day, my friend Jen, JK Ultra, saw my TikTok and she reached out to me. If you're not familiar with Jen, she does a lot of amazing work around disclosure and E.T.s and consciousness. But yeah, she reached out and she was like, hey girl, I don't mean to scare you, but you may have been abducted by aliens at some point, so you might want to look into that. So I kept that in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, good to know. Fast forward to my ayahuasca ceremony, and I meet the E.T.s that abducted me in a past life. So I'm going to call these E.T.s gray aliens just because what I know about the gray aliens, they fit the description the most. And when they came to me, I was like, you're a gray alien. And they didn't correct me or push back, so that's just what we're gonna go with. So the Greys explained that they didn't mean to scare me when they abducted me. Remember, this is a past life. To my knowledge, I've not been abducted in this life. Thank God. But they were explaining that they're scientists. They like to study things and that they're very logic based beings. I got the feeling that they don't really have the capacity for emotion, if that makes sense. So basically, when they went around abducting different people, because it didn't just happen to me, they were doing it with the intention to learn. It was for science. It wasn't necessarily a good intention. It wasn't necessarily bad. I got the feeling it was just neutral. So they explained all this to me. They did not apologize. I want to be clear. They did not give me any apology. They were just like very matter of fact about it. Almost like talking to a computer. Like they were just like, yeah, we did this. This is why we did it. And what? So then I was shown that at some point, other ET civilizations kind of came together and talked to them and were like, hey, y'all got to stop this. You're giving us a bad name. You're making us all look bad. You're scaring the humans. Like, you're freaking them out. And I don't think it ever occurred to the Greys that they were scaring people. Or maybe it did, and maybe they just didn't care because they don't process emotion in that way. And now I'm hearing that it's not that they didn't care, they didn't understand. Either way, a form of conversation was had, and they came to an agreement that they could still do their experiments, but maybe this wasn't the best way. There was a point in the ceremony where the room was just pure chaos. There was someone on this side screaming, there was a mess in the bathroom that needed to be cleaned up, there was people crying. It was just like the energy was so chaotic. And to be fair, the team was going around all night clearing energy. I know they used Copal, maybe Palo Santo and Sage, I can't remember. So they were definitely on their jobs. But for 2 of the nights, my mat was right next to the bathrooms. And the energy near the bathrooms is just chaotic in general because people are running there to purge and they're often like very in the process. And if the bathrooms are full, then sometimes people get very antsy and anxious. So I was picking up on a lot of that energy and it was just throwing me off. So I heard a voice that kept saying, organize your energy, organize your energy. So I started thinking, what would the Greys do? They're so organized and efficient. So I said, okay, Spirit, I need help organizing this energy. Who in here can help me? And I asked the medicine to guide me to whoever was the most efficient at organizing energy. And it led me to a member of the shaman's team. We'll call him Mountain. That's not his name, and I picked a random word. I'm looking at a mountain outside. So it led me to Mountain, and I recognized him from earlier because he was helping organize things in the ceremony. He was moving the cups around, the pillows, making sure everyone was where they needed to be in the line. So I sat down in front of him and I said, did you organize your energy before you got here? And he looked at me like almost offended, like, I'd like to think so. And now hearing it back, I can admit that was a weird way to ask the question. But what I meant was, I could see his energy and it was so aligned. So I was asking, are you aware of how organized your energy is? Did you meditate before you got here? Is this something you did intentionally? Anyway, as we're talking, the Greys show me that they know him, they know Mountain, and they respect him. So I ask him, do you know the Grey alien? And he gives me this look like, girl, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the gray aliens, do you know them? And he's like, no. And I'm like, but you've heard of them. And he's like, no. So now I'm really confused. And I'm wondering if the medicine or the aliens are playing games with me. But then the grays tell me, tell him we know the octopus. And I'm like, okay. Well, Mountain, they say they know the octopus. And he goes, oh, yes, yes, the octopus. And I tell him that the Greys work with the octopus because that's what they're showing me. So then I see Mountain's mind just click and he's, oh. And he tells me this story. Basically, before he came to work at Rythmia, a friend of his took ayahuasca and saw a vision of him being invited onto a spaceship. And the friend told him, you're going to be offered the opportunity to go on a journey on a spaceship. So at some point in his actual life, he was offered the opportunity to go on this spaceship and he did not go. He turned it down. And I asked him, why didn't you go? And he said, I was scared. I was so scared. He said, I didn't want these little alien things doing experiments on me. Obviously, I thought that was hilarious because same. So we talked some more, and the Greys were telling me, tell him he doesn't need to be afraid. It's a choice. And I'm like, easy for you to say. But basically, they were saying they don't mean any harm. Now, I personally have a theory that this is one of the reasons Greys work with other alien species. I don't know this to be a fact. This isn't information I received in the ceremony. It's just my opinion, but if you follow E.T. contact stories, you'll hear a lot of reports about the gray aliens being associated with other E.T.s. Some people say that they're like assistants or droids and that they do a lot of manual labor. I personally believe that when they're interfacing with humans, sometimes they'll bring a more benevolent ET that can better connect with humans and hold a frequency of love so that the humans aren't as afraid. For example, when the octopus came to me in ceremony, I immediately recognized the energy as loving, whereas the gray aliens have a very almost cold energy. It's not evil, it's just like neutral, a bit standoffish, emotionless. Okay. So we've made it through night 3. This is a good stopping point because night 4 deserves its own night. I'll explain more about what Yahe is, and of course, I'll share my experience with this powerful, beautiful medicine. If you're heading to Rythmia soon and you've been hearing about the Yahe night and you're feeling anxious, don't. I was a little nervous going into that night because I've heard different people's experiences with the medicine, and honestly, my experience was nothing like what I heard. So even when you're watching this video, just keep in mind your experience will be your own, and that is a good thing. All right, if you're still here, I love you. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.